No.
Yeah, please start.
Start? Okay. Good.
Okay, start.
A very pleasant afternoon to one and all present here. This is Fariha Khan from Pinnacle Blooms Network.
This is Kiran Babu from Pinnacle Blooms Network.
And today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic that is usually discussed very frequently by parents when it comes to academics. Parents usually complain about their children, talking about children being very poor in academics or children being very lazy when it comes to academics. So today's topic of Wednesday webinar is learning disability and its management in special education. Okay, so what comes to your mind when you hear this word learning disability? So anything, any area in which the child is lagging behind in academics is considered in the area of learning disability. So let us now first discuss about as to what is learning disability. So learning disability is disability in one or more basic processes of using or understanding language, either spoken or written, which may manifest itself in the imperfect ability to listen, read, spell, speak or write or to do mathematical calculations. Now let's just put a light on this definition. What is learning disability? When we use language or when we understand language, when there is a defect in understanding the language or using the language, either written or spoken, this will indirectly or directly affect in the areas. It will manifest in the inability of a child to listen or to read or to speak or to do mathematical calculations. So that is the reason why parents keep complaining that the child is unable to read properly, child is poor in academics, or child is poor in specific subjects like maths or English or Hindi, like that. Now let us go a little bit deeper into all these things. So children having difficulty in reading is also called as dyslexia. Inability to write is also known as dyscalculia, and inability to do mathematical calculations is also known as dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and there are few other learning disabilities like dyspraxia, where the child is unable to make eye-hand coordination or poor motor skills. Let us now go a little bit deeper in learning disabilities, dyslexia. So what is dyslexia? Dyslexia is nothing but difficulty in reading. A child having inability or difficulty in reading is called as dyslexic child, or the child is suffering from dyslexia. Now dyslexia has two types. One is mild dyslexia and another one is severe dyslexia. So what happens to mild dyslexic students? Usually mild dyslexic students might have problems in reading. They might have issues in reading simple letters or reading simple words or reading simple sentences. And severe dyslexic children may be able to read, but when it comes to, they might have total word blindness. They are unable to read anything. They don't know how to read, and this is also known as word blindness. Mild dyslexic students, if diagnosed, if this is identified at an early stage, mild dyslexic students can be incorporated along with their peers in normal school, whereas severe dyslexic students need intense remedial exercises. They need intense remedial exercises for them to be incorporated into general school. Okay, now let us go into different types of dyslexia. Okay, so the first one is visual dyslexia. What is visual dyslexia? What comes to your mind when you hear the word visual? Visual is nothing but any work which is done by our eyes. Okay, so children with visual dyslexia have problem in processing information which goes from the vision. For example, they are unable to translate the written letters into sounds. For example, letter A. They know the letter A is there, but they don't know how to sound it, how to spell it. They are unable to translate the written letters into sound. Because of visual processing disorder, they have the problem in visually processing what is seen, and then they are unable to spell it out properly. They are unable to translate the sounds. Okay, this can be in the form of, for example, a child might read B-A-D, bad, as B-E-D, bed, or F-A-N, fan, as F-U-N, fun. So this is there. This is known as visual dyslexia. Another type of dyslexia is known as auditory dyslexia. Now, what is auditory dyslexia? Again, the word auditory signifies anything that is done with the ears. Okay, the work of ears. So, when there is a issue or when there is a problem in auditory processing, when children are unable to process through their ears, auditory dyslexia is the result out of it. Okay. So, what happens over here is that they are unable to auditorily discriminate the letters or sounds or anything else. Okay. So, they are unable to do auditory discrimination. For example, the words or the letters with nearest phonemes or nearest words which might look similar or similar configuration of words might look similar to them, and they might not discriminate between the similar configuration of words. For example, the letter B for ball and D for dog looks similar to them. They do not discriminate between the letter B and letter D. This is over there. And another thing is they do not discriminate between the letter M and letter N. So they cannot make this minute discriminations between the letters. Or for example, they might read letters with having final or initial consonant words. For example, they might read the word BAD, bad, or as DAB, DAV also. So they don't have auditory discrimination between the letters or words. Okay. The next type of dyslexia is memory skills, poor memory skills. When you are unable to visually process the things, or when you are unable to auditorily process the things, here comes the issue. When children cannot retain information in their memory, they are unable to retain information, or they are unable to, even if they retain the information in their memory, they are unable to recall the information. They are unable to recall what has been already taught. Because of auditory and visual processing problems, this thing occurs. They are unable to memorize. They have problem in memorizing or recalling from their memory. Another thing is sound blending. Now, what is sound blending? Sound blending is nothing but the child knows the letters. He is well versed about the letters. He knows what is A, he knows what is B, he knows what is C. He knows letters. Even he might know words very properly. But what happens over here is that he doesn't know how to blend it into different sounds. For example, M-A-T, mat. He might say M individually, he might say A individually, or he might say T individually. But when combining or blending it into sound becomes a problem for them. For example, M-A becomes ma, he doesn't know. M-A-T becomes mat, he doesn't know. He is unable to blend the letters into sounds. Another thing is critical reading skills. So what happens in critical reading skills is that children might be aware of the letter, they might visually discriminate, they might auditorily discriminate, they might have good memory skills. But what comes the problem over here is that critical reading skills requires a child to understand the intention of the author of writing certain sentences or certain lines, or making value judgments out of a paragraph, or drawing conclusions out of a paragraph. This might seem very difficult for a child with dyslexia. Critical reading skills might be lacking in the child with dyslexia. He might not be able to make value judgments out of the stories or out of written paragraphs. He might read, he might be able to independently read, but when it comes to understanding or making value judgments or understanding the intent of the author, this might look very difficult for the child with dyslexia. So these were different types of dyslexia, that is visual dyslexia, auditory dyslexia, sound blending, critical reading skills and memory skills. So when a child is affected with dyslexia, these are the 5 areas which might affect. Now let's move on to another thing that is called as dysgraphia. Now what is dysgraphia? Dysgraphia is nothing but problem in writing. When the child is unable to write or has illegible writing, the child is tagged as dysgraphic child. Okay. So some of the in this there are again 2 forms, that is mild dysgraphia and severe dysgraphia. So what happens in mild dysgraphia is that children with mild dysgraphia might have minute problems of copying from the board, or they might be a little bit poor in spontaneous writing. But when they have identified at an earlier stage, they can be incorporated along with their peers in inclusive or general school. But when it comes to severe dysgraphic children lack the ability of spontaneous writing from their mind, or writing quickly when asked. So they don't know how to write spontaneously. Because of very much reasons, they might not be able to write spontaneously. So this was about dysgraphia. Some of the characteristics of dysgraphic children are poor pencil holding, poor pencil grip, or poor eye-hand coordination, poor visual memory. Because when it comes to dysgraphia, it's not the work of eyes and ears. It involves hands too. So the child should have smoothing of muscles. He should have the knowledge of using his arms, his hands and his fingers properly. He should have fine motor skills. He should have a proper grip for him to write. So these are few characteristics. These are few important things which should be there in a child to write. So lack of all these things might make it difficult for a child to write. Or the child might have dysgraphia due to certain minute motor skills, or poor eye-hand coordination, or poor visual memory. Okay. So now dysgraphia contains a few more features, like the child might be lacking in pre-writing skills. Now what are pre-writing skills? Pre-writing skills include scribbling. Whenever the child is given the pencil to hold, what he does is that the first thing he does is that he scribbles. So he might not be having the concept of independently scribble anywhere, but when it comes to scribbling, he might not know where to start from and where to stop. He might not have the concept of controlled scribbling. Controlled scribbling, if he is having a drawback or he is unable to make controlled scribbling, this will again put a problem in coloring concept, because coloring concept again requires controlled scribbling. So the child might lack the ability to do coloring concept when he lacks the ability of controlled scribbling. Now the child might initially not hold the pen properly. For example, if the pen is given to them, he might use this type of grip, or he might make only use of 3 to 4 fingers, which is absolutely wrong. The child should hold only with 2 fingers. The next thing is, even if the child knows how to hold properly, there might be an issue in gripping. For example, he might write very lightly, or he might write too darkly on the paper, which may tear off the paper. So these are few things in dysgraphic children. The next thing is cursive writing. Cursive writing becomes a very big problem with children with dysgraphia. This might look a bigger task or a hassle task for them to write when it comes to cursive writing. Going through the blue lines and pink lines in foreground might become a very big task for them. So this might be one of the feature of dysgraphic children. And manuscript writing, copying from the board, copying from the books, this might be there. Okay, these are all about the handwriting part. The next thing is writing from visual memory. Okay, so the child is able to read, the child knows the letters, the child identifies the letters very nicely, but the problem comes over here is that he is not able to visually write from his memory. because of lack of memory skills, he might not be able to write from the memory. Another thing is that poor phonetic ability. Now, what are phonemes? Phonetics are nothing but sounds of letters. For example, A makes a sound, B makes b sound, C makes k sound. So, because of lack of poor phonetic ability, children with dysgraphia might not be able to transpose the letters into certain sounds. So, they might know the word bat, they might have seen the word bat and they might read it B-A-T as bat, but when they have to write, they might not know that writing bat requires letter B, A and T. Now, another thing is that in dysgraphic children, what happens is that some children might write totally downwards on the paper. Like they start from the starting of the page, but the end of the line they might be going exactly down of the page. Some might write totally upwards. Some might mix capital and small letters in dysgraphic children. So these are the few features. Okay. Another thing is that phonetic ability is poor, visual memory is poor, and these are certain things. Okay. The next type of learning disability is called as dyscalculia. Now, what is dyscalculia? Dyscalculia is one of the, this type of learning disability is most frequently seen from 1 to 5 children. Like out of 5 children, we can see one child with dyscalculia. Okay, so dyscalculia is nothing but poor in mathematics, poor in the concept of numeracy, poor in mathematics. Okay, so some of the features of dyscalculic children are they might not be aware of the number concept, they might not be able to numbers look Greek and Latin to them, they don't understand the concept of numeracy, they don't understand as to what are numbers, like why is 1 written, why is 2 written, and what does 2 number denotes. Okay, so this is there in dyscalculic children. Let us now go a little bit deeper in types of dyscalculia, like what are the problems children face when it comes to dyscalculia. Okay, the first and foremost thing children face is that shape discrimination. They are unable to discriminate the shapes. Because they are unable to discriminate the shapes, there comes a problem in identifying the numbers. For example, the number 6 and the number 9 might look similar to them. Because they are unable to discriminate that number 6 has circle in the down part and number 9 has circle in the upward part. So they are unable to discriminate, and that is the reason why they are unable to identify 6 and 9. 6 and 9 looks similar to them. Or for example, 9 number looks as P to them, or 7 number looks like F to them. So they are unable to make shape discrimination. Okay. Another thing that is seen in dyscalculic children is that they are unable to make size discrimination. For example, they are unable to differentiate between big and small, tall and short, more or less quantity becomes literally they don't understand these abstract concepts. This becomes very difficult for them to understand. So they have problem in shape discrimination, they have problem in size discrimination. Now comes problem in numbers. As to what is numbers or what concept numbers, what is the actual work of numbers, they don't understand. This is over there. Okay, and they don't understand as to what sets denote. Okay, for example, bunch of apples or group of crayons, box of crayons, or flock of birds. They don't understand all what is this. They don't understand the concept of sets, or they don't understand that this element belongs to this set. They don't understand the concept of sets and numbers. Or even if they understand the numbers concept, they are again having a problem in counting concept. For example, if 3 is written, they don't understand that 3 constitute 3 different things or 3 different objects. When we combine 3 different objects, it is actually 3. They don't relate the number to its concept of numbers. They don't relate the numbers to their objects. They have difficulty in this. So when they are unable to discriminate, or they are unable to understand the number concept, what happens over here is that this further leads to problem in classification. They don't understand the concept of classifying things according to the number. or classifying objects according to the numbers. This is over there. Another thing children with dyscalculia face is that they don't understand the quantitative language. Now what is quantitative language? They don't understand the concept of before, between, after. For example, what comes before 4, they don't understand. What comes after 5, they don't understand. They don't understand what comes between 11 and 13. This becomes a very difficult task for them. Or they don't even understand as many as less as, or as more as. This becomes very difficult for them. They again have a problem in identification of mathematical symbols. For example, plus, minus, division and multiplication sign might look very difficult for them. For example, they might indicate multiplication sign as letter X. They might get confused it as letter X. Or for example, equal to sign might make them understand that it is actually 2 minus signs instead of 1 equal to sign. They don't constitute to the concept of whole thing. Okay, this is there. Another thing what dyscalculic children face is that understanding the concept of word problems. For example, Meena has 4 apples, Raju has 5 apples. How many apples, total number of apples are there with them? So they don't understand these concept of understanding drawing solutions from the word problems becomes a very big task for them. Another thing what children with dyscalculia face is that they don't understand the concept of spatial concept. For example, measuring time, what is 1 hour, what is 60 minutes, what is 10 seconds, they don't understand. Or distance, 1 kilometer, half kilometer, 2 kilometers is literally Greek and Latin for them. Or measuring liters or measuring items in kgs is totally a big concept for them. This is over there. Another thing what is that computational skills, where they have to compute or where they have to use all these things, they don't understand. Where to put all these things into an order or into a sequence becomes a very difficult task for them. Another thing what children with dyscalculia face is that visual and auditory association. What they see visually and what they hear auditorily, they don't understand how to utilize it, how to make an output out of it, becomes again a very big task for them. So these are the some features in the children with dyscalculia. There are minute difficulties for the child to calculate or to do mathematical calculations. These are few features of dyscalculic children. Okay, the next thing is dyspraxia. Now what is dyspraxia? Poor motor skills. What are poor motor skills is that motor skills requires your muscle strength. Anything which is done with your hands, your fingers, your arms, your legs or your whole body movements comes into motor skills. So the dyspraxia, children with dyspraxia have features like clumsy walk, they are unable to walk properly. Walking on stairs become again a very difficult task for them, or making eye-hand coordination, putting the book on the right place to write becomes a very big task for them. Holding pencil becomes a very big task for them. Holding book or turning on the page, minute task of turning on the page might look very difficult for them. So this is over there. The next thing what we are going to discuss is auditory and visual processing disorders. So anything we see through visually, we see by vision or the work of eyes is known as visual processing. When they lack this skill, they have the inability to visually process things. So this results in visual processing disorder. Now what is auditory processing disorder? Auditory processing disorder is nothing but anything which is processed through our ears. So when children with the learning disabilities are unable to process through their ears or what they hear, then this becomes, they have the problem of auditory processing disorder. So today we have discussed about learning disabilities, types of learning disabilities, namely dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, auditory processing disorder and visual processing disorder. Now parents say that ma'am, my child has this issues. What to do? How to cope up with all these things? There are very few quick and minute simple tasks to be performed at home. Being a parent, you can use all these techniques. For example, if the child with dysgraphia is having a problem of holding pencil, simply take a normal socks with strong elasticity, make the child wear the socks in his hand, point the two things, that is his index finger and his thumb finger. Point over there, make holes, and now the child is putting his finger through the holes. Now the child is only making use of only two fingers over here. So make the child hold the pencil with his two fingers. So what this happens is over here is that first he will learn the concept of holding pencil properly, and second thing is that he has a proper grip to hold pencil and write with that pencil. The pencil will not fall off from his hands. Another thing is that usually children get irritated when something is being worn on their hands. Simply take a chalk piece or any other thing. Tell the child to hold it in his three fingers over here in this space. And now the child is again making use of how many fingers? Only two fingers. So by this he will be able to make, he is holding the chalk plus he is writing only with the two hands. Another thing what usually parents complain is about the understanding the concept of B and D. For very quick and simple technique can be used anywhere is that this finger technique. Tell the child to do like this. This is B and this is D. When you do like this is actually B. This is constituting to B and this is D. So say him that your right hand is actually D and your left hand is actually B. When you get confused, make this and tell the child to identify it through this thing. Initially, if you tell him to relate it within 2 to 3 days, usually the child learns the concept of B and D. Or else we can relate to things. For example, B has a belly in front and D wears a diaper at back, like that. Using simple techniques may go a long way in making the child understand difficult tasks, and these difficult tasks might become very, very simple to them. Okay. Another thing over here is that memory skills. Parents usually complain that children are very poor in memorizing things. So telling a child to sit at one place and telling him to read mug up what is being said is actually wrong. So what you need to do over here is that, for example, I go to school. He has to memorize this word, I go to school. So simply put an I over there, go put some footsteps over there so that he can relate it as go. 2 means write number 2, numerical 2, and school draw a picture of school. Simply a building or school. So by picturization, he might be able to read the words or he might be able to memorize it as quickly as possible. Now, next thing is making use of acronyms. Acronyms are nothing but simple words or short forms of words. Make the short forms out of words and tell him. For example, Vibgyor. Vibgyor is nothing but the 7 rainbow colors. So make him make the task as simply as putting it into acronyms. So he needs to just memorize the letters and not the simple word. If he memorize the letters, he will quickly relate to it as words. So this will help him in memorizing long answers or long pages. So these are very few techniques which can be applied by anyone and at any time. So this will help the children with learning disabilities to cope with their areas in which they are lagging behind. So we are having few questions to be asked. Let us now look at the questions. Okay, so we have a question over here is that the child is not able to understand the concept of numbers. He is not able to relate to numbers. So what we can do over here is that we can just simply first introduce number concept to him. Initially he has to identify numbers. Okay, 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3 and 4 is 4 over there. Okay, so first he needs to identify these numbers. Okay, then what he needs to do is that he needs to relate to it objects. Simply take beads or simply take balls or simply take anything. If you are taking a ball, put near 1 and say 1, 1, 2. Take 2 balls. 1, 2, 2 like that. 1, 2, 3, 3 like that. So this simple techniques can be used for the children. Up till initially we have to make the concept we have to elaborate it from simple to complex. Don't make the task complex for the child initially, because if the task is complex in the beginning itself, it will make difficult for the child to move on to the task. Okay, this will become very difficult for that. So introduce it in a very simple and precise and small manner. Initially take only 5 numbers or at least 3 numbers depending upon the capacity of the child of understanding skills. Okay, so initially start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then tell the child to pick up and put, and while he is picking up, tell 1, then tell 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, like that. So he has to relate the numbers to the concept of objects. Okay, so this was actually today we have discussed about learning disabilities, types of learning disabilities, and its management in special education. So hope you have understood the concept. Hope this webinar, this Wednesday webinar might have helped you and somewhere gave you that information which was not passed away to the parents or the teachers or anyone who over here saying. I hope these techniques might be used at home, school or any therapy center as well. So it was nice talking on this topic. I hope you understand. I hope you like the webinar. So with this, today we are going to end the webinar. Thank you so much for attending the webinar.
Thank you so much.
Pinnacle Blooms Network ప్రపంచవ్యాప్తంగా స్పీచ్ డిలే, ఆటిజం స్పెక్ట్రమ్ డిసార్డర్, cognitive developmental